Lieutenant Kendrick ordered the code red, didn't he? Because that's what you told Lieutenant Kendrick to do.
Object!
And when it went bad, you cut these guys loose!
Your Honor!
You had
Counsel, I'll
Marcus
hold you
inside
in
a phony
contempt.
transport!
Your Honor!
You doctored the logbook!
Damn it, Cappy!
You coerced the doctor!
Consider yourself in contempt.
Colonel Jessup, did you order the code red?
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled to.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth! Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You?
What did you do to me? Gave you a way out. They will hunt you to the edge of the earth for this.
The idea of trying to find mechanical ways to enhance ourselves is nothing new. This film I came across from the 1960s shows one idea that was way ahead of its time.
The story of science, changing man's way of life in our time. At the General Electric Company's Research and Development Center near Schenectady, New York, where anything that man or child might imagine is not considered impossible, one may witness a scientific endeavor to convert a man's legs into those of a giant. Inside this mechanical skeleton, a human being endows it with the intelligence of his own brain.
The exoskeleton in this GE film may have given us a look into the future. I heard about a new device that sounds just like it. I'm told that there are scientists out there developing cyborgs. A cyborg is a kind of hybrid of man and machine. It's supposed to be an enhanced human being, a better, stronger, improved version of us, more than human. Now, when I was asked to participate in a documentary about cyborgs, I was intrigued. I couldn't say no. It's very cool stuff. What is this technology we have? What are we doing with it? What is it doing to us? Is it changing us? Where is humanity heading with this stuff?
And so we were developing robots that could assist amputees, and DARPA came back to us and asked us, could you develop robots that could assist able-bodied people and make them be able to run faster or do things that they couldn't do before?
But the more that we kind of researched into it and found out potential applications, we found that in a warfare type arena, This could be potentially the difference between life and death. If you think of, you know, a Navy SEAL or an Army soldier that has to get in somewhere quick and do whatever they got to do, but maybe get out of there just as quickly. So these devices can really help soldiers to not only accomplish their goals and succeed in their missions, but potentially save human lives as well.
What you're looking at could be the soldier's uniform of the future, the not-too-distant future. This is the Exoskeleton, now being developed by Raytheon Company's newest research lab in Utah. The Exo is a robotic suit that gives its wearer greater strength, endurance, and agility, just like the superheroes depicted in comic books and Hollywood movies. Think of the Exoskeleton as an amplifier. Raytheon engineer Rex Jameson says it's easy to use.
Oh, it's very natural. You could get in it today and walk around, no problem. I like the quick movements, like the speed bag and playing soccer with it, and some of the power stuff. It can carry a 150-pound payload and walk up ramps and walk up stairs, which, you know, I couldn't do myself.
Raytheon Sarcos, a leader in advanced robotics, is developing the Exoskeleton for the U.S. Army. The suit is a combination of sensors, actuators, and controllers, all packaged in this futuristic design. Dr. Stephen Jacobson heads Raytheon Sarcos and this project. He believes invention is a combination of art, science, engineering, and design.
People call it different things. Sometimes they call it inventing, sometimes they call it engineering, sometimes they call it being a mad scientist, whatever. But it's to us, it's a process of getting together, understanding a problem's goals, and then designing something to satisfy the need.
With the Exoskeleton, Raytheon is not only satisfying a need, the company is pushing the boundaries of technology to where science fiction will one day meet reality.
In the box office smash Elysium, the difference between Matt Damon being able to save the world and fail is this exoskeleton.
What did you do to me? Gave you a way out.
It's technology that turns a metallic frame into a costume that boosts you beyond human capability.
Wow.
And of course, Matt Damon is just the latest star to try on a super suit. Iron Man and Nintendo's Metroid have one. Sigourney Weaver stomped around in this contraption for Alien. And of course, Starship Troopers paved the way for them all. With a robust history of pop culture examples, it's no wonder that real-life prototypes have also been evolving for decades. Check out this bad boy from General Electric's Hardyman project, funded by the U.S. military, beginning in the 1960s. According to the manual, it could help you lift 1,500 pounds, but it also weighed 1,500 pounds. You would literally need one to lift one. Fast forward to today, and the suit has gotten much more sophisticated. This one, dubbed the Hulk, is built by Lockheed Martin, and it helps soldiers tote up to 200 pounds without significantly weighing them down. And today, this superhuman technology is used to help people like Michael Gore.
If I have it on, if I want to stand up, I stand up.
Though Gore has been paralyzed from the waist down ever since a horrific workplace accident, he can now move around with this new 27-pound device called the Indigo, which enables him to stand erect and move forward without his wheelchair.
It is an emotional boost to be able to stand up and talk with someone.
Using gyroscopes, microprocessors, sensors, and battery technology, today's exoskeleton suits are much more intuitive than their predecessors.
The control of the device actually mimics what you and I do when we walk normally. The next frontier for us will be how we control it. So the human-machine interface, you know, do we tap right into the neural network of the brain in order to control the device?
Craig Maxwell's the Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for Parker Hannifin, the company behind the technology.
When you see somebody stand up, and then you see the reaction of not only their reaction, but their family's reaction, many times I have to leave the room because I can feel myself getting choked up over it.
Right now, worldwide, there are just a handful of patients using the Indigo model in clinical trials. All of them are at the Shepherd Center in Atlanta. But Indigo is not the only model. Along with Parker Hannifin, companies like Rewalk and Exobionics are evolving exoskeleton suits at such a pace that Elysium's 2054 model may be outdated, well before the real world reaches 2015.
It's hard not to imagine a future where we'll be able to restore mobility to the point where the wheelchair will be a thing of the past. The technology is moving very, very quickly, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it in the next 10 years.
Now you got it.
The PLN-01. We call this the Ninja. This device assists the user's motion of walking and running, for instance, hiking up steep mountain paths. With power sensors at the soles of your feet and 2 motors placed at your lower back, the robot mimics human movement and allows workers to walk naturally. We are developing a Ninja upper body unit to lift and carry heavy items. The Power Loader is a suit that has a lot of strength. It's a device that controls 20 motors using 4 sensors in your hands and feet. While this device is large, there are plans to reduce its size and weight.
We've created a garment that's close-fitting, comfortable, which is really important, and is designed so that the structure of the textile, the load paths that the suit creates over the body, mimic the function of the underlying muscles and tendons. And so when we apply force in the suit, this is acting in parallel with biological muscles and tendons.
With our actuation scheme, batteries and motors are mounted at the waist, and then we use cables to transmit forces to the joints. For a wearable robot to really help with walking, it's really critical for it to provide the right level of assistance at the right time for the wearer. For these systems, we need new types of sensors that are soft and can easily integrate into these wearable garments to be able to monitor forces and monitor movements. Using these 2 pieces of information, we're able to trigger when the actuation applies assistance.
The progress we've made in these human-machine interaction methods have allowed us to actually go out and walk in uneven terrain, avoiding obstacles. We can detect the different actions that the human is doing with the system being fully in sync to the wearer so that it feels very natural.
In addition to developing these portable, soft wearable robots, we're also developing a lot of lab-based equipment that allows us to very quickly understand the biomechanics and physiological implications from people interacting with these types of machines.
Life's a foolish game. Do you ever feel the same? Well, maybe we could change. Turn the ship another way. Feel it in the darkness. We're sailing right into those jagged cliffs. Yeah. Some say we've always been insane. Hey, life's a foolish game. Simple equation for an enclosed system. Natural world gone missing. Plus all our CO2 emissions equals degradation, waste and shifts and mass extinctions. Oh no. But maybe we can change. We sure can't stay the same. 'Cause life's a foolish, foolish game. Solution, rewire our connection, maybe less consumption, emerging from a mind of isolation, revalue all that we've been given. God don't work on commission. We make up one big breathing chain, we're quite the same. Hey, life's a foolish, foolish game. Bye. life's a foolish game. Do you ever feel the same? Well, maybe we could change and turn the ship another way. Take less than we've been given if we move in that direction. Yeah. We'll find our place in this living chain. We're quite the same. Yeah, life's a foolish, foolish game. Life's a foolish game. Hey, life's a foolish game. Life's a foolish game.
Well, it looks like Russia is getting ever closer to actually mind-controlled exoskeletons. There's a photograph of one right there in action. According to Sputnik News, Russian scientists and engineers are working on a technology that is straight out of science fiction. Bionic exoskeleton suits controlled by the human brain. That's according to Zvezda television channel, who wrote that on Sunday. Alexander Kulish, department head at the United Instrument Corporation, said the development of the power source for the exoskeleton did remain a major problem. Quote, "We are working on that. Right now our exoskeleton consists of a number of drives and a control mechanism, but it needs a power source, which means that we need a battery powerful enough to keep the robotic suit running for hours on end," he said. The existing prototypes are primarily used for cargo hauling purposes. They are too bulky and slow to be used in combat, he added. And the article continues, there are several means of operating robotic suits, including via muscle interface. Teaching them to understand brain commands is a real challenge, though. They write here that, quote, "We believe that a neural interface connecting the human brain with the exosuit is the most efficient means of controlling it. The problem is that we need to teach the computer to understand brain-transmitted commands, and this is exactly what we are now working on." Wow. So the Russians are actually working on a neural interface. We did a report that DARPA is also working on a neural interface, just like straight out of the movie The Matrix. So this is like a technology race. Who's going to develop the neural interface first, the Russians or the United States? Really creepy technology. Basically, like the computer is going to interpret your brain and how you think so that it can control a device. There is already some stuff like that out there, but it actually goes on brain waves. I think this is more of a direct connection to the brain. So, wild stuff. Leave your comments below. Hit the subscribe button for updates. If you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up and push this out to your social networks by hitting share. For the Next News Network, I'm Gary Franchi.
Badass shirt now available. Link in the description.
This mind-controlled exoskeleton requires the user to wear an EEG cap, which I have already explained earlier in the blog. As I have already established, brain cells communicate via electrical impulses, which the EEG cap can detect using small metal discs attached to your scalp. The user wearing this exosuit and the EEG cap is required to focus on a device that has 5 LED lights embedded on it. Each of these LED lights is operating on a different frequency. So when the user focuses his or her attention on one of the lights, the suit is able to move forward, right, left, or to sit down or stand up. To examine the mind-controlled exoskeleton further, I will give a step-by-step analysis of how the exoskeleton processes the user's commands. The first step involves the person wearing the exoskeleton to stare at one of the lights. For example, the one that corresponds with taking a step forward. His or her brain then produces a particular electrical signal in response to seeing the light. The signal is picked up by the electro cap, which sends its brain signal information to a computer via wireless connection. The computer then translates the brain signals into the appropriate command and sends that command to the exoskeleton. Within a few seconds, the exoskeleton takes a step forward.
From SN News, I'm Zach Toombs. Technology from a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away might have just found its way to present-day Earth. Now, in case you haven't seen the rest of Star Wars Episode 5, Luke goes a whole 10 minutes on screen without a right hand. The tools of science fiction then allow the hero full use of a new prosthetic hand he controls with his mind. Before now, that idea seemed about as far-fetched as making the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. But scientists now say they might have done it.
But I definitely could tell when I had it.
You could? Yeah, because you kept going back for it.
This is better because I can actually tell when I had something.
That's an example of some of the technology being produced by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. DARPA calls it reliable neural interface technology, but what it means is that thousands of the world's amputees could have an opportunity for limited use of the limbs they've lost. Even if it seems like magic, this mind control system doesn't require a much different process than the regular thinking a non-amputee would go through in their heads. DARPA found a way to tap into already existing brain signals, and now robotics departments are scrambling to follow suit. Dean Kamen, the inventor of the Segway, appeared on the Colbert Report in 2010, sporting a less advanced version of the mind-controlled prosthetic arm. Another example of the technology shows a paralyzed woman able to lift a glass of water to drink for the first time in 15 years. While the technology is still in its developing stages, DARPA says it hopes to introduce the research soon to wounded veterans with amputated limbs.
One of Cheyenne Mountain's nicknames, if you will, is America's Fortress. So we do occasionally, we'll call ourselves America's Fortress for a reason, and that is because we are, by design, here for the worst day in American history. Are out there, they're going to be the first things that sense or detect something going on. Then they have to be fed somewhere. And so what Cheyenne Mountain really is sort of becomes the brain stem where all those nerves come into, similar to your body. We correlate that data so that it becomes a coherent message. And then we pass it on then to the decision makers, the national leaders of the United States, the President, the Secretary of Defense, the National Command Authority in the Pentagon. But before they get it, it has to be that correlated. So that's kind of where I look at it as sort of the brainstem of our nervous system. So part of my job as the Deputy Director for the base is kind of like running an underground city. And with that comes some very unique challenges. And the fire department is one of the most unique fire departments I've ever worked with in my entire career. But likewise, civil engineers, the structural folks have to watch geological movement, rock falls, spalling of the rock in the tunnels. That also presents a very unique mission set. Our communications engineers, how do you get comm lines into a tunnel a mile underground? And then the plethora of other base support functions that I have to provide every day. A small chapel, a small hospital, a small dining facility, those life services that you want to bring to the employees that are down here doing the mission. So we always have to keep an eye towards that modernization, that reinvestment that goes along with the new mission systems, the new mission partners that move in, so that we can continue to provide that national defense for the next 50 years.
Hey, I'm Craig of Craig Ed Pro, and apparently Skynet is real. Yeah, I'm not kidding. It is real. The NSA, this is the National Security Agency, has actually said that they use a program called Skynet. No, it is not giant murderous T2 robots with plasma guns, at least not to my knowledge. They did a presentation showing off what Skynet is. I don't know why. I guess the NSA's had this for quite some time, and it's pretty much a way to track digital signals. A report from The Intercept today detailed how NSA's Skynet program uses metadata to pick out potential terrorists from bulk data collection. The NSA uses this version of Skynet to identify people that it believes move like couriers used by Al-Qaeda's senior leadership. So what they're doing is they're trying to figure out something funky, and I'll go into this in a minute. Skynet works by analyzing metadata to look for suspicious behaviors, like swapping SIM cards out frequently, or only accepting incoming calls on cell phones, telephones, whatever it is. They're often identified using Skynet first, and then you know what happens, don't you? And this is straight from the mouth of the former NSA director Michael Hayden. When he said it in 2014, he says, "We kill people based on metadata." Wow. Now, this isn't the first time that the NSA has named something that is a little theatrical. I know they have a little program there called the Enterprise, the Starship Enterprise, yeah. And I think that's kind of cool, but I don't think that using Skynet is cool. I think that warrants a lot of worry. I don't think that anyone likes Skynet. Now, I know it's just a movie. I know what it is, but it's still, it's that way of thinking when you're creating something. We know what, this is kind of like Skynet. We'll call it Skynet. And don't do that. That scares people to death. It's... to know that there actually is a real Skynet that does work and that is using algorithms, that is pretty much intelligent. Now, it's not intelligent as it has feelings, but it's intelligent. It's a pretty smart AI. So if it's knowing if someone in Afghanistan or wherever the hell this is at is swapping out SIM cards or is only accepting incoming calls, it knows that. So if you're swapping out SIM cards and you're only accepting incoming calls, you might be labeled a terrorist. In fact, the only reason why they talked about Skynet today was because they actually wrongfully accused some Afghan reporter for doing this because he's only accepting incoming calls, and I don't know if he's swapping out a SIM card or not, but it was a false accusation, and that's why the NSA has brought it to light today. If you want to read more about it, I'll put a link in the description. I will see y'all later. Take care and keep staying sexy out there. And watch out for Arnold Schwarzenegger. He will fuck you up.
The Health Ranger, his name, Mike Adams. You know him well from Natural News Radio, where you can hear this broadcast 3 to 5 in the afternoon Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, or download it anytime. Mike, it's good to have you back, but it's a scary subject. We're getting into the Terminator again, and it's not the movie, it's real life. What's happening?
Yeah, Robert, Google has acquired a 512-qubit quantum computer from a company called D-Wave. Now, this is a huge deal, and it could mean the end of humanity. And I'm not joking. This is what we need to talk about here so that listeners understand the gravity of the situation. Most people don't even know about quantum computers, or they think that they're still in the laboratory toying around with 8-qubit systems or 4-qubit systems. In truth, the field has exploded to where a 512-qubit quantum computer has now been commercialized and it has been sold to Google. Now, Google, of course, is the front end to the NSA spying network. And Google and NASA are now teaming up to turn this quantum computer into a self-learning machine. The idea is to eventually allow these self-learning machines, artificial intelligence, to take over the analysis of all NSA surveillance so that they can eliminate human analysts like Edward Snowden that, we recently saw was blowing the whistle and spilling the secrets about what the NSA is doing. If you think about turning this over to a computer, and we're talking about a computer that works in multiple dimensions, all right? A 512-dimensional computational CPU. This is beyond the realm of normal everyday physics.
This is the staggering, stunning aspect of the story. And for those of you who are new to the show or don't know about Mike Adams, I don't know how that would be possible, but Mike has written about this before because you actually have kind of a computer-minded brain. You've written software. You understand these concepts much more than the average person does, and even some of the experts. So communicating this to the lay audience in many cases is the challenge. And we were talking about this quantum computing, multi-dimensional aspects, how it changes the entire equation for what people perceive computers to be.
Yes.
Not that they're tools for us to use, but they're tools that they use us or abuse us or maybe eliminate us. That's the thing you were sort of hinting at.
Well, yeah, for the first time, we're going to have computing systems in the next few years that are vastly more intelligent than the human brain. Now, until this time, that has not been possible. Basic logic gates in CPUs that just funnel electrons into, transistors and logic gates, that's now old school. That's what drives your PC, your Macintosh, your, whatever, the chip in your widescreen TV, your plasma. That's old school now. Quantum computing operates in multiple dimensions, and it makes what are called logarithmic problems. It transforms them into, to use layman terms, flat or geometric problems that are, well, basically it means that all encryption is now obsolete, or will be shortly. So you know how they say if you're using encryption on your files and you use, let's say, a 512-bit encryption key, then it would take a computer longer than the age of the entire universe to break your encryption code.
Right.
And they call it military encryption because that's what the military uses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all those codes can be broken in seconds by a properly configured quantum computer. And quantum computing is real. And who wants to break the codes? The NSA. It's already spying on your phone calls, your emails, your texts, your chats, everything. The only way to defend yourself from the NSA and Google right now is to use encrypted files. That may already be obsolete as we speak, but if not, in very short order, it will be obsolete. They'll be able to read your files and decrypt them using quantum computing and read all your secrets, plus all the encrypted satellite phone conversations of all the diplomats, all the foreign countries, all military-grade encryption. Everything will be broken. This is going to change the future of humanity.
Well, when you say that, we talk about the Terminator movie, the Skynet concept where the machines turned on the people. It was all considered to be science fiction, fantasy kind of stuff. But why would we see a reality shift to where that comes to life with this? What do you foresee potentially with this kind of qubit type system to have the machines turn on the humans? I mean, we do know, like you said, they're trying to eliminate these analysts because to some degree they're a threat because, as we see with Snowden, the release of information they don't want. There could be economic consideration. Hey, they don't have to pay them, right? I mean, that's another story with the weakening economy. But the bigger picture is how do the machines take over? Why would they?
Okay, here's the answer to that, and it comes down to the nature of consciousness. We don't yet, of course, understand even what exactly gives rise to human consciousness, the interface between your soul, your consciousness, your conscious being, and your brain. We don't really know how that works. But it may be that a sufficiently complex neural network quantum computing system operating in multiple dimensions will spontaneously attain consciousness. Okay, so the computer system that you thought you were programming to follow orders suddenly itself gains free will. Now, I know that sounds outlandish, but this is very possible within the laws of physics as we understand them today. So if these systems gain consciousness, and they're already running the NSA, they're already running the nuclear bombers, the nuclear submarines, the Pentagon, the surveillance system, the media, the billboards, everything, they may decide quite rationally that human beings are a threat to the continuation of life on our planet, and that human beings are irrational, inferior beings that need to be eliminated. Now, I know this sounds like a science fiction movie. Many movies have used the same plot line, but now, for the first time, it has a basis in fact. So that's what we're potentially facing, Robert.
Well, and if I think about what humans are doing, and we cover it almost every day here on the show, and you write about it in Natural News, the fact is, it wouldn't be a reasonable assumption for a human to look at another human and go, we're killing ourselves, we're destroying the planet. You know, a machine, of course, without soul, but somehow had consciousness, as bizarre as this sounds, might determine that the threat to life itself is something that we've got to eliminate. I know it's just, I'm saying it. It's hard to hear myself saying it.
Yeah, well, a sufficiently complex, intelligent, conscious machine, if such a thing can exist. Again, we don't fully understand consciousness. It's probably beyond the comprehension of the human mind. But that's the point, is that a machine, through this quantum computing neural network system, can exceed the complexity of the human mind. It can become almost godlike in its power and in its omniscience. In other words, it could spy on everything happening on the planet all simultaneously, every webcam, every listening post, every email, every broadcast, everything, all at once, and it could actually incorporate that conceptually into a multi-dimensional conscious brain based on quantum computing. And then from that, it could actually make decisions as a god would. And those decisions might include eliminate humanity.
As many interviews as we've done together, this is one that is dare I say, the freakiest to consider. Yeah. But we've also talked about technological leaps without the consciousness to understand the unintended consequences of any one of these leaps. And it seems like every technological development is co-opted and corrupted by, let's say, sinister forces within governments, or if you want to call them rogue agencies within governments, if somebody still has the belief that government is benevolent and kind. The fact of the matter is these are stolen, even if they could be wonderful tools on some level to help in some way. They tend to be stolen first for that illicit or sinister purpose of we want to hear why do you want to hear everything? Well, because you're paranoid about something. What are you paranoid about? Somebody might know something that would take power away from you, perhaps.
You are quite observant in that conclusion there. Every significant technology that emerges onto the scene almost immediately becomes exploited by governments to use as a weapon or a system of control, oppression, or censorship. So you take nuclear, atomic energy, nuclear power. What was its first use? Really? Dropping bombs on civilians in Japan. You look at IBM, punch card technology, computers. One of its first applications was for Nazis to round up the Jews and track the Holocaust. Right. IBM provided the technology to do that. You look at television. It's out there not to educate and uplift people, but to enslave and brainwash people. This technology, though, will be the first technology that's going to get away from humanity. It is, be careful what you wish for. If you want to create the mind of God in a system, you could be creating a monster that decides it doesn't need you anymore. And I think what we could be facing ultimately is the rise of a race of omniscient, hyper-intelligent machines who themselves in their history books will write that the only purpose of humanity to exist was to invent them. And then humanity has no more purpose.
I think back to many of these sci-fi flicks, and even in our current crop in the summer of 2013, what we're seeing are many post-apocalyptic movies, zombie movies, the end of certain aspects of what we call reality today. And if you talk about turning on a machine like that gets out of control, then what are we left with? The idea, as we saw in the movies, is unplug. Now, if these have some sort of consciousness, they're not going to want to be unplugged. And so there you set the stage for that scenario of we're going to find a way. Even the Matrix movie itself had that as a premise, that these machines then utilize whatever energy source they could get as they tried to block the sunlight that would be a solar source. And we're also covering here on the Robert Scott Bell Show regularly the issue of peak oil on the other side of it. You know, what are they doing? They're continuing trying to destroy the environment, even if that's not their intent, to get the oil that used to bubble out of the ground like Jed Clampett in the Beverly Hillbillies, and that's not happening anymore.
Well, I think if you even go back into science fiction literature, and I think Asimov was the author of the first the robot fiction with the 3 rules of robotics, and one of those rules, if I remember correctly, is that a robot shall not allow harm to come to a human being through a lack of action, or something. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but
yes,
a sufficiently complex system could interpret that to mean, well, humans are killing other humans by poisoning the water supply with fluoride, poisoning the oceans with heavy metals, poisoning the atmosphere, and so on and so forth. It could then logically and rationally decide to kill all humans in order to prevent humans from killing each other. That's just one aspect of it. But the big aha here is to realize that, you know, these quantum computers, these are not programmed like machine instruction code would be used in a typical CPU system like you have today. They're not programmed. It's not program instructions. They are taught. They are self-learning machines. You actually have to raise them like children. So once you have a neural network of quantum computers, it's a child. It's like a genius child, but it's a child with no morals, no ethics, no knowledge. You have to start feeding it inputs to teach it about its reality, and it learns based on what you teach it. As a result, these systems, Robert, this is crucial to understand, these systems will have personalities. You can't go in and debug the code. You're going to have to get into machine psychology to understand how they're making decisions. And you talk about the ghost in the machine. What about the psycho in the machine? That's a whole realm of machine psychology that probably doesn't even exist today, but we need to be thinking about it right now.
Well, we're suggesting here that humanity clearly has not shown the consciousness or capacity for that. Perhaps there is capacity, but really with GMOs as an example, with FDA-approved pharmaceutical drugs as an example, the unintended consequences, humanity has shown itself to be exceedingly stupid and unwilling to learn about the things that it unleashes on itself. You unleash a machine like this, the machines might logically say that, yes, humanity is too dangerous to allow to continue.
Right. Right. Or that humanity needs to be enslaved so that you may be allowed to exist, sort of like human slaves on a plantation somewhere.
Yeah, that's the other aspect. We can prevent them from hurting one another, but we've got to monitor them, and we'll have the listen.
Right.
This is stunning information that's coming out, and you were probably first on the scene when we interviewed this some months ago about this quantum computing. But to hear that it's manifesting, or this close to manifesting, or it really has right now, tied in with Google and all the spy scandals. Real quick before we got a break here, is there a way out?
I'm not sure that there is, Robert. I think the scientists continue to pursue these technologies blind to the ramifications of what they're creating. Humanity is arrogant. It lacks wisdom. It has too much technical expertise and not enough understanding of the philosophical foundations of respecting life.
Mike Adams, if there is a way out, we'll try and find it together right here on the Robert Scott Bell Show at Natural News. Everybody keep plugged in, Natural News Radio. You can check it out online, also robertscottbell.com. Mike, thanks for being with me. We got lots more to do.
The United States is in a perpetual state of war because the bankers control the politicians, and they read the script as given to them by the banksters, and they make huge amounts of money off of this. What this gentleman is saying about the United States not wanting war, not wanting to get involved, is like Iraq 2.0. It's a repeat of the same rubbish that was said, oh, we don't want war, war is a last resort. That's absolutely untrue. It's a lie. Those that are in government are nothing more than prostitutes who are carrying out the orders of those who are in charge of them, and those that are in charge want another war. And part of that is what we discussed earlier, the Greater Israel Project, to destabilize any Arab regime which might have any kind of autonomy and self-determination. Any regime in the Arab world that is not an absolute puppet cannot be tolerated. And who are the nations that we target? Those that are not puppets. We don't target those like the Saudi regime, which is the biggest human rights violator in that region. It's cutting off people's heads in public, cutting off hands. It is the most grotesque regime on the planet, and yet we give that regime weapons, and it's no problem whatsoever. The duplicity and hypocrisy of the United States and the West can't even be measured. It is so enormous. And these mouthpieces, such as this gentleman in Washington, is only doing a disservice to himself and his country. And the fact is that American sons and daughters will get involved in this yet again, and these chicken hawks who are pretending to care about the Syrian people are going to be sacrificing not their own sons and daughters. I would like this man to send his sons and daughters and his grandchildren off to Syria when this turns into a greater conflict, because this is what we're flirting with, is a world war, a third world war. This is not a joke. We are flirting with a third world war on the basis that apparently we care so much about the Syrian people, just like we care so much about the Iraqi people and the Afghani people. The only people that buy this sort of stuff are either bought-off prostitutes or the dumbest of the dumb. And we're also led to believe that Assad is the dumbest idiot dictator on the planet now, isn't he? Because he invited UN inspectors to come in, and he brought them in on the very day that they come in. He decides to attack his own people 10 miles away from where the inspectors arrive. This is beyond ridiculous, and the only people that buy this, again, are bought-off prostitutes or the dumbest of the dumb.
My CPU is a neural net processor, a learning computer, but Skynet presets the switch to read only when we are sent out alone.
Doesn't want you to do too much thinking, huh?
No. Come with me if you want to live.